So about 3 years ago, you actually came in here, Aaron, and talking with us about your Tribal Nations map. And at that point, it's still sort of in its infancy stages. Yeah. And I knew that you knew what was ahead of you. I think in your head, you could see sort of the future. Mm-hmm. I saw so much work that you had done already. It would be hard to see you expand, but my goodness, you have. Talk about what's happened since that day.
Well, since then, at that point, I had only created a map of what we would call the lower contiguous 48 United States. So at that time, I had maybe about 550 nations displayed there, and I knew that over time I would be adding, sub-tribes of larger nations, and even some nations that I had somehow not added yet. And about that time, I was starting to get calls and emails from people from Canadian First Nations, and they were telling me, well, you've cut the border off at Canada, and how about our people, so. And I felt like that maybe wasn't my place because I'm not from a First Nation up there. And so I was trying to actually kind of recruit other people to collaborate with me. But once I explained how much work and research was involved to a lot of people, they kind of said, well, you've already got the ball rolling, so why don't you keep going with it? So my next map after I interviewed with you the last time was of all of the First Nations of Canada. Mm-hmm. And over time, I add nations as people let me know, hey, you're missing one here, or you could expand this area a little bit more and kind of fill it out with some of our sub-tribes or even village names sometimes. So it's from there, I basically branched out into all of North America, and then I worked all the way down through Latin America. And then now my most recent map, which was the final section of the Western Hemisphere that I had not done, was the Caribbean. Right. So I actually am fluent in Spanish too, so that allowed me to do a lot of research of like explorers from the 1500s era Spanish. I can read that, like Christopher Columbus's journals. I've read them in his original Castilian. And so that helped me on top of contacting tribes throughout the Americas.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What's so cool to me about this, Aaron, is you mentioned it there. Throughout this process for you, you've gotten feedback from tribal people themselves that are like, hey, let me give you this tip here. Right. And I think when you came last time, was helping you with the Muskogee Adola, the people.
And I made the change.
Right, and you did,
away.
And so what's that been like for you though, to get that assistance from the people that are, it is them that you're displaying on this map?
Well, there are about 1,200 cultural departments that have contact information throughout North America, mainly the U.S. and Canada. So I've contacted every single one of those in some form or fashion. If I didn't get through with an email or a phone call, I'll send a letter. And generally, if someone from their cultural department or an elder gets back to me and helps me, what I do is I send them a free map once I make sure that their area is correct. So I've overtly attempted to contact as many cultural people as possible, which has definitely helped. But then I also get people, because they're out there in the public now and published, I get people that contact me and say, hey, here's a suggestion. Or sometimes sometimes they may not quite understand that these are traditional homelands. Like, for example, some people from some Oklahoma tribes have contacted me and said, well, hey, our nation isn't represented. And I have to remind them, I'm beckoning us back to the time where we lived in our traditional homelands, and I'm showing where our people were pre-contact. Yeah. So that's what this map is about.
Absolutely. So you taking it to a whole nother level too with your operation with the website too. You've now got your website going. Tell us a little bit about that and how proud of it you are.
Well, I definitely couldn't do it myself. It's been a big learning experience to handle all the technology, the videos and the HTML coding and all that goes into it. But I have a graphic designer, kind of web developer friend that has been with me since pretty much the start, since I've been back here in Oklahoma for over 3 years. And he helps me take it from a research point to a final product, aesthetically, visually nice, for someone to look at. And so I give him a lot of the credit. His name is John, and he lives up in Muskogee. And so he helps me make regular updates. He also helped me form the website. And, we kind of together, we collaborate a lot, about once a week, on any new updates or to the actual names or to the actual website, something that would allow people to like for example, one feature is you can hover over any of the images on my website and it zooms in all the way, so you can see if your tribe is there or what have you.
Cool.
So yeah, it's been there's a lot to it, but it's nice to have someone be able to go through it. I've also got a section for media, like most of the newspapers and radio stations that these have been involved in are on a big list chronologically. So things like that are nice to have.
And you made a lot of articles, and our previous interview, I think, really caught like wildfire for you. You put it up, and people really responded to that. Have you seen a great response from the media that you've done?
Yeah, and in fact, the interview that I did with you guys a few years ago definitely helped catapult, and it was one of the first situations where these got out into the public sphere visually, and so the video really helped. Definitely here in Oklahoma, I had a lot of people. At the time, I was living in Warner, Oklahoma, and I had a lot of people from different tribes call me and meet me in Little Warner, and say, "Hey, let's meet at the McDonald's. I want to buy some maps from you."
Yeah,
so it was very interesting, and definitely since then. It's amazing, but these maps have been featured in like Indian Country Today, Indians.com, even NPR sent a reporter out to do a story. So it's something that I thought this would be a cool map for my own personal room, and it's just gotten out there. It's a niche product for people who are passionate for Native rights and Native history and contemporary issues. It's a reminder that. There is a historical basis from which all tribes, come.
What are your main challenges, Aaron? I would guess or speculate that it would be historical inaccuracies in texts that would have been, put forward, and holes in research. I mean, is that probably your biggest challenge when trying to put things together on your own? Yeah,
there are some tribes where maybe the traditional people of those tribes aren't really. They're kind of hesitant to have, maybe sacred names for their tribe or something like that, or even traditional names blasted out there for the public to see. So there's situations where, and a lot of it is like not knowing the translations of a traditional name, even if I find that out. So a lot of it is seeking out people who, there's some people who are the last speakers of their language, of their tribe, and one recent thing is I went to Ponca City and I met one of the last 5 elders that can speak the Ponca language here in Oklahoma, and he was explaining to me all of the meanings of his tribal name, and I'm still working with him to get the real name of the Ponca, because Ponca is kind of it's a corroboration of a kind of an offensive name from another tribe. So, and that's very common. So a lot of times it's like like the traditional name of the Cherokee people is Aniunwia, but there's an even more traditional name that has a sacred connotation that because of that I've kind of left it off the map. So there's a lot of that. Every tribe is a little distinct in its worldview and its creation story, and so I try to be very sensitive to those things.
And sometimes within the tribe, we have in Creek Nation, when we deal with our language, we're very hesitant to put when we title segments and things like that for the shows and the videos, we're hesitant to put what's the Creek word for it, because there's several different people that say it different ways, and just be careful with that. So I can understand what you're saying there. The maps themselves, people that watch this and want to get maps, they're available off the website, right?
Right.
And they can get them right there. I mean, do you have set up or?
Yeah, you can purchase them right off the website. I actually donate a whole lot of these maps to like underfunded tribal schools and organizations, and even non-Indian schools as well. So a lot of people contact me to get these for different things, events. There was one event, a lady recently purchased one of these large North American maps, and they had kids from about 100 different tribes at this event, and they gave them all a pin, and they said, go put a pin in the map wherever you're from.
Cool.
So at the end they stood back and they looked, So people use them for a variety of things.
And that's been nice, probably visiting the schools, I bet, for you.
Yeah, I do that once in a while. Sometimes it's amazing because I used to be a pretty radical activist fighting for all kinds of Native issues across pretty much the Southwest, and now I've created something that's like inside of school districts. So it's been interesting to see something that I've made, liked by teachers, and I'm talking to superintendents on
Yeah.
the phone and things like that. So, but yeah, it's if there's a need, that's nice to see.
Right, great. Let's actually take a look at what we're dealing with some of the maps, some of your newer work.
Sure.
Let's start off with what your most recent project is here.
Okay,
So,
sure. This is one of my most recent maps here, and this is a. Should I leave it like this? This
Yeah.
is a map of current, basically land holdings or land held in trust, anyways, for tribes,
Oh, wow.
American Indian reservations and tribal jurisdictions. And one thing I try to do is to distinguish that not all Indian land has the same status. So, for example, a lot of these western areas are reservations, and I tried to show that there's a lot of checkerboarding going on. So a lot of non-Indians were allowed to come in and like homestead, or lands are leased and things like that. And the reservations are not always contiguous. You know, it's not always one solid block. And in Oklahoma, I try to distinguish with the different color and image there that, you know, although we have many tribes here, they don't
There's no
necessarily.
res.
Yeah,
A
the reservations
lot of
are
people, we
gone.
run into that a lot. They're
Yeah.
like, "You're from Oklahoma, reservation,"
Yeah.
and we're like,
They
"No."
think it's all one big reservation.
Yeah, yeah.
And to try to explain that there's like, you know, a jurisdiction and there's council members that represent a section, but there's non-Indians living all throughout is
Right.
a big conversation for
Yeah.
people to understand. And so in green, I've colored some of the, this is a little known thing for many Americans, that pre-Revolutionary War, the United Kingdom made a lot of treaties with tribes on the East Coast. And some of those the treaties are no longer valid. They were invalidated by the United States after the Revolutionary War. So these tribes were left kind of landless.
Right.
But some of those reservations still, even if they're just, you know, tiny dots like 4 acres or 10 acres, they're it's a vestige of, you know, from that time until today.
What's crazy when you look at this is, look here,
Yeah.
nothing,
Yeah.
hardly, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at your other map that represents pre-contact,
Yeah.
it's a kind of a sordid story there, you know,
Yeah.
just because so much history here moved this way, and then out west and southwest, they're dealing with their own problems as well with being reservation and
Sure.
things like that. And we've recently seen where in the Navajo reservation, right on the border, you have cops
Yeah.
possibly, you know, with a unjustified killing of a Navajo woman. So
Yeah.
there's issues there, and that story brings those up. So you can see how, you know, out there they're established, everything like that, but there are also issues that come
Yeah,
up from
like
it as well.
reservation border towns,
Right.
you know, and there's.
I think it was Winslow, Arizona, where
Yeah,
this happened,
yeah,
and
where
it's
they're-
right there, you know, right
Yeah,
there.
that's pretty common. You
Yeah.
know, I have friends from all kinds of reservations, and they say basically the natives stick to the reservation, especially if it's after dark.
Right.
You know, that's very telling. But yeah, a lot of these Midwestern states that force tribes over here, and there's tribes in Oklahoma. There's one that came all the way from Oregon, the Modoc Nation. You know,
Right.
they're from Oregon. There's a lot of tribes from Michigan that wound up here. But a lot of these tribes literally enacted laws around their statehood time that no Native person was allowed to be within the state boundaries.
Wow.
So those are actual laws. So that's why you see, you know, no
Nothing.
people represented.
You're right,
Yeah.
exactly. I want to take a look at this one too, Aaron, if you don't mind.
The Caribbean?
Caribbean, yeah. Caribbean Travel Nation map, because it might be time for me to go visit some of my long-lost brothers and sisters in some of these tribes.
Yeah?
Because I need to go to the Caribbean. No, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kidding. But talk about what went into making this one, and
Sure.
you know, probably some of the fun that you had researching this.
Yeah. Well, about 10 years ago, I lived right here in it's a town called Trujillo Alto in Puerto Rico, south of San Juan, the capital, by about an hour. And so while I was there, Puerto Rico is only about 100 miles long, so I took the time while I was there for about 6 months to travel the whole island. And
Wow.
they still have some known sacred sites, village sites that they maintain in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
They don't have like NAGPRO laws, so you'll see like full-on skeletons that they've
Wow.
unearthed on display in these museums, which was like a little, it
Oh
was
my
a little
gosh.
impacting because
Yeah.
they're not exact, they're I guess a territory of the United States, but they're not beholden to some federal laws. So that was strange. But San Juan is where most of the Spanish people settled. And so you see as you travel through the island, you know, the people look more and more native as you go
Sure,
west
yeah.
because they hit up in the mountains and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
there's a a knowledge of Puerto Ricans and Cubans, and here this is a Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Jamaica. There's a knowledge that most Caribbean people have native blood, varying degrees depending on which island you're on. But I used a lot of Spanish explorers' accounts. Like for Cuba, there was a Spanish explorer who documented as many names as he could in the early 1500s. And then there was a modern day Cuban anthropologist who went town by town just about 10 years ago and tried to revalidate all of this guy's information. So there hasn't been a map of the Caribbean tribes this complete yet because I've taken a lot of distinct maps and then research that I've done from books, modern and old, and put it all into one visual display, which is kind of what I'm trying to do.
When you see something like this, the main thing that comes to my mind is you see a lot of cartography and a lot of maps done, things like that. But as far as just like specifically native peoples, I mean, to your knowledge, you're the only one doing this, right? I mean,
well, I wouldn't say I'm the only one doing it. I may be the one. I think I'm creating the most comprehensive maps, tribal maps, that pre-contact tribal maps that had been made to this point. But it's not to negate the fact that a lot of tribes on their own have taken an initiative for decades of creating their own regional maps.
Sure.
So a lot of times what I'm doing is asking permission of tribes. Would you mind if I use the research from your map to add and make more complete my maps? And a lot of times what they've done is they have access to information and elders that maybe I do not, of course. So it definitely helps that they've done their own research. But I would say the percentage of tribes that have like really gone in depth to do that is not as high as it would be nice to see. So yeah, I'm doing some regional maps for tribes too. I'm trying to help them in that way, or they're asking me kind of ideas on how to complete theirs.
We've seen here at Creek Nation, even in our geospatial department, they have started mapping out tribal towns and territories, things like that. Yeah, you should go talk to them. It'd be great for you to do that. But they've started mapping out original tribal towns, territories, things like that, all in the original homeland side, and doing all of that work. And so there's a young gentleman that's really taken that on, and I've been looking at some of his maps. And then just here recently, the Citizenship Office released a map of the United States with the number of Creek citizens living in each state represented on the state.
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty cool map.
Yeah.
And we released it and talked about it yesterday, but I thought, man, if I got Aaron coming in here, he'll probably think that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So you are seeing, I think, more of a representation, resourcing, being able to educate, and I think that's for you, I think that's probably, A1, and I think for everybody else is that to educate. That's the primary thing here.
Sure, and this is kind of branching out into different types of maps like that. Maps can be used in many different ways, and the newest map that I'm working on right now is I'm meeting with, I think I told you, a biologist who is working on saving the whooping crane. And he studies the migration patterns of the last 300 birds in existence, and so he's having me take my U.S. tribal map and basically make a map of where all of these birds migrate, and where they stop, and whatever nation they stop in or fly over, he's having me kind of just show those tribes and what those tribes call that bird and their relationship to it. So there's all kinds of spin-offs.
Yeah, that might have been the whooping crane. Might have been what held up the construction at Margaritaville up here in Tulsa for a little bit. That's great though. I mean, and like you said, it ties in with so many different things, and you have so many different resources, and you even did 3 years ago. And how many maps are available now in total, Aaron, before I let you go?
I've got probably about 20 or 25 different maps, but each of those maps have 4 versions. So I'll have a map that has, you can get this map, for example, with only traditional names, or you can get it with traditional and common names.
Yes.
And then you can get it with or without modern geopolitical borders.
Great. Yes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And that can all be done tribalnationsmap.com, is that right?
It's tribalnationsmaps.com.
Maps.com, plural there. Tribalnationsmaps.com. Aaron Carapella, get you hooked up with all that you need to be able to use these as you want. want. You can put them up in your office like I do. You can take them to your school, local schools as a teaching tool. It's a wonderful thing, and I think you're doing great work, man. It's really great having you in again.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Aaron.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.